Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Wylam here. In today's vlog, we're going to be taking a look at the firmware update for the X-T4 and also the 16 to 80mm f4 lens. Now, both of these in the firmware description says that it has improved stabilization for movie mode. So the IBIS system for the X-T4 and the optical image stabilization for the 16 to 80 lens. So we definitely want to test this out today. But before we actually get into that, there is another topic that I want to cover real quick, which is with this firmware update on the X-T4, there has been some control changes that weren't relayed in the notes, and it's actually very annoying because they lock you into a specific configuration and you can't actually change it. So you can no longer use the dials, the big nice dials, the shutter speed and the ISO dials. You have to use the command dials that are on the camera itself. So you can't use those nice dials anymore because they're locked into photography only, and you can only use the command dials in movie mode. So this is definitely something that I don't really like, because the command dials can be very useful, but it doesn't mean that we want to use it that way all of the time. And it's now different from what you can do with the X-T3. So this is something that you definitely want to look into before you actually update the firmware on your X-T4. Hopefully in a future patch, they actually have a toggle mode in which you can actually switch in between the two. We should have the option of flipping back and forth between them. So hopefully they will address that in a firmware update. Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Wylam here. In today's vlog, we're going to be taking a look at the firmware update for the X-T4 and also the 16 to 80 f4 lens. In the first test that I did, I think a couple of weeks ago, we kind of saw that it wasn't working as well with each other as some of the other lenses. So hopefully with this firmware update, it actually did improve and we can see something that's very noticeable. Right now, I do have digital image stabilization turned off. So this is just with IBIS and the optical image stabilization. Also in this vlog, what I want to do a little bit afterwards is talk about ND filters, how it correlates with motion blur and image quality, because a lot of people confuse image quality and motion blur because, you know, they kind of think it's the same thing. But I just wanted to kind of elaborate on that a little bit just to make sure that everybody understands. But right now we're just doing a simple walking test, seeing how the IBIS and the optical image stabilization is working out. Right after this, I will do another test with digital image stabilization turned on, and then you can kind of compare and contrast. Honestly, I still really don't like digital image stabilization, but that's really up to people to decide. So we're just doing a quick walk around test, and please let me know what you think of the improvements or the firmware improvements of these two systems working together. All right, so this is a test with digital image stabilization turned on, so hopefully it is a little bit better. It is slightly cropped in, but hopefully you won't notice too much of a difference. There is one thing that I really quickly want to talk about, which is why I don't really care about shutter speeds or frame rates, depending on how you look at it. It's because one of the followers of my channel asked me to look at my own videos on a smartphone and watch the entire video on a smartphone to see if I noticed the difference. And it's something that was very apparent once I actually watched it on a smartphone, which is when you actually watch it on a smartphone, higher frame rates actually do look significantly better than lower frame rates like 1/50 of a second or 1/60 of a second. That's because the motion blur, while it's actually working and it's effective, it actually doesn't look very good on a smartphone in that small little screen. Now, for most of us who are YouTube content creators, we're used to watching ourselves in a big desktop monitor, and when you watch it in, you know, that large of a size, especially with a quality monitor, you notice the difference in terms of the jumpiness of higher frame rates. But on a smartphone, you don't really notice that. You also don't notice the warpy effect of it. So I can totally understand why people will prefer higher frame rates when they're watching vlogs on a smartphone. And it's the reason why I don't really have much of an issue with just going with higher frame rates, because a lot of people watch these vlogs on smartphones and it just looks better. So for me, just don't really care anymore. So right now I have the ND filter on the lens, and this is what it looks like for image quality when it's a very static scene. So I'm not holding the lens, it's on a tripod, I'm standing very still, and I bet you the image quality looks really good because there's really nothing in motion right now. Things are going to change drastically once I actually start moving because we're dealing with very low shutter speed. So we're talking about 1/60 of a second, or I'm shooting at 30p, 30 frames per second. So as a quick demonstration with the ND filter turned on, and right now I'm locked in at 1/60th of a second for my shutter speed. This is what motion blur looks like once you actually have it at a very low frame rate in the outside world. It looks like it's a perceived image quality drop, but it's really just the motion blur, and this is what you really want to capture when you actually drop to this low of a frame rate, which I understand that when you actually look on it in a smartphone now, that it looks like an image quality drop, and it's something that doesn't look really good, to be honest with you. On a smartphone, having high frame rates looks really crisp, it looks really good, and it's something that I'm on board with because if you look at the analytics and the statistics, a lot of people are watching on their smartphones. So really the better image quality is what you're really looking for, and it just looks better on a smartphone. So the final test of the day is I do still have the ND filter on, and I also turned on digital image stabilization to see if it actually helps with the actual imagery. And this is something that you'll let me know, but I'm walking around very normally like I usually do. I don't really do like a vlogging walk because I don't know, I've never done that before, so it's not something that I'm very used to. But this is what it looks like, and hopefully you can give me some feedback on whether or not you like digital image stabilization. I've never been a big fan of it, but there has been people that are big proponents of digital image stabilization. I think it's a really cool technology. I just think that it has a long ways to go before it gets really good to the point where I would just use it consistently. But you know what? I could be wrong on it. It could improve during this firmware update, and it's very usable now. Really don't know. Definitely give me your feedback on that. But I am definitely interested to see whether or not this firmware update has really drastically changed things from a vlogging purpose. This is definitely just a data point. So this is just me showing you one example. You definitely want to use plenty of examples from plenty of vloggers and X-T4 users. All right, so that is all of the testing that I'm going to be doing for today for vlogging purposes. I'm definitely going to be playing around with the menus and also the command dials to see if this is the only way that we can interact with the camera now for movie mode. This is definitely something that I don't really like because we're losing a lot of very useful dials in movie mode. I understand that they're really splitting apart what you can do in movie mode and what you can do in photography mode, but for people who are primarily just using it for videos, we should be able to customize it to where we can use the dials we want. Same thing for the photography side. I feel like this is a good direction that they're going, but it's right now very limiting, which I'm sure we will actually discuss that a little bit more in a later video. But that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.